give the people watching an experience.
Sleep deprivation's a hell of a drug.
Why don't you keep talking about your epiphany?
I want the answer, and I sort of want it now.
I may like to challenge that notion of your black and white world.
Maybe I punished all the other commodities, and then I won in that commodity.
Maybe I should try juggling. What's up, guys? Today we've got one of Australia's finest kept secrets coming at you from the land down under with a casual 13 million plus tournament winnings, not to mention cash game winnings. He was originally a cash game player, self-described gambler, yet very rational guy from my experience. Let's see what he's got to say. Kahle, what's going on? Yeah, and I met you in Triton as we were battling in the 200K and all these like high rollers. And I haven't met too many Australian poker players. I am a little bit. My first thought is I'm a little confused by something. You call yourself a gambler, but you know, as I was just saying, you seem to be like a really rational guy, and you're like throwing all these like very challenging rational questions at me, or rational perspectives, or like perspectives that show you're thinking about things using this kind of lens. So how does this make sense? Because I would think that gambling and when you look at poker as gambling, I mean, I just would have thought I would have put you in more of like the how do you say, the camp that's like studying and all that. Maybe you're doing that too, but maybe there's a bit both. What's going on here?
So I was interested to bounce some difficult questions off you, and then you bounce some difficult questions off me too. In terms of gambling and poker, whatever, I guess, I don't know. Everybody is in the camp of using a lot of solvers, it looks like, at the moment. And I wouldn't say I'm the person that has used much solvers. I definitely have seen some of the outputs that they've had, and my friends have sent me some stuff, and I have done some stuff, but I wouldn't say I'm just out there on the solver grind or anything like that. When I see these things, my first thought when I knew they come out was I was a bit devastated for poker, to be honest, because I realized that we're heading down the path that like chess and other games have head down, where these computers are they're going to start figuring stuff out pretty fast, and then everybody can just sort of use memory strategies and adopt them. But I guess when I see the stuff that Solvers does, I sort of just try and comprehend why it does A, B, C, and D. Does that make sense? And at first I might not comprehend it, but then I want to understand, okay, so if it uses this bet size and it uses this raise size or lead size, where does the EV come from? Like, because maybe there's mathematics that is purer than what the solvers are doing. They're just getting there via millions of simulations with a finite amount of bet sizes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I've done a lot of work with the solvers, but I have done some, and I've done a lot of thinking.
Okay. Well, we'll get into the thinking. We'll do some. We'll see if our thoughts collide on some kinds of things. I'm just curious of this notion that you're a gambler. Would you say that's true, or are you more like, are you a gambler? Would you say you're a gambler, or you're out there and you're on the hunt? You're a shark. Which is it?
I mean, I'm definitely trying to win always. Don't get me wrong. It's a cutthroat game in poker where there's winners and there's losers, right? And I don't want to be on the loser side, but
all right,
I can't look you in the eye and say I've done all the study that some of the harder workers have done either. So I can't put my hand up and say, yeah, I've looked at that. I have looked at some stuff. I definitely have thought hard. I've played hard, done a lot of hours, but on the table more so than on the study side of things. But I perhaps don't. I don't know. These, like, I'm not anti-solver. I just want to say that first and foremost. I think the solvers are great tools, but I think they're also what they are is they're tools. Does that make sense? Like, if you just try and remember a strategy that you see on a solver, so you look at 20 sims and you say it bets this size there and then it bets that size there and whatever, and you try and remember all that, like, I don't think that's as good as trying to comprehend why it does certain things and then extrapolate that out. Does that make sense?
I completely agree, actually. I do get the feeling that a lot of players, including high stakes players, do like look at things too much from the lens of like just looking at trying to rotely memorize a lot of solutions. I mean, you can do that to an extent. I don't know for sure, but yeah, I mean, I was the same way. I always looked at why it would reach these kinds of conclusions and that sort of thing, and this would open up
Mm.
different pathways of learning. At least from that was my perspective. I got like a few ideas just looking at the solvers that were exploitative, actually. But I would
Mm.
have used a different approach. What I would do is I would have, if I was really trying, I would like test a few alternative approaches to the conventional ones
Mm.
and see. Um, I would see if there's like any kind of uh, deviate if there's much EV difference, because probably there's a few different strategies that have close EVs but not perfect EVs, if that makes sense at GTO.
Yeah, it
And
makes sense.
probably of those strategies, um people probably will not play nearly as well as they would against the conventional ones. Like everyone knows roughly what ranges to defend against the 30% pot bet or 25% pot bet, especially like the 2/3 pot bet. Actually, people play pretty. If you look at the defend ranges of the 2/3 pot bet and the 3/4 pot bet, uh, it's like they're pretty intuitive,
Mm.
actually. So it's not
You might
so
be able
easy
to
to
say
make
that as a
mistakes.
Jungleman. I don't know if everybody can say that.
I mean, there's not. I mean, it's like you defend pairs and some gut shots and
Yeah.
like no real surprises. You defend like the occasional high card hand, and
Mm.
like that would be like the mistake that people make,
Mm.
like that kind of thing. Whereas, I mean, it's harder to defend against 30%, you can say, but even these days, people understand that pretty well. There's still a lot of potential mistakes. Like I probably make some myself, if you look at all the different situations. But whatever. But anyway, all right. So it sounds like you are
I agree
more
with
of
your
a
thought
math
process
guy.
a lot.
We're
Yeah.
honest. We're not going to see you in the pits.
Well, I
We're
think
not going to
like,
see you.
oh no, probably not. I understand that, like, you just got to tap the table and say nice hand to some of these games, and they're not to be played. But I don't know. Originally, when the game come out, I tried to do some study with pen and paper, and I wouldn't
Hmm.
say I could do it to an extent where I'm like, hey, I'm fucking breaking some serious barriers here. But it's like you can do something with pen and paper, and I think it's pretty good. And when the stuff you
Yeah.
could do with pen and paper, it might not be be able to compete with a pie solve strategy, but it's a strategy that you can balance yourself manually. And if you can learn how to make a balanceable strategy manually on any given board texture, and then you can start doing that to other board textures, I think that's a pretty good skill to have. So I would just do something like, which is pretty simple. I'd say like R equals range, and then if I get to a spot, it could be like I could have value range, I could have bluff range, I could have check raise range, and then let's make sure that if the size of the pot is, say, P for pot, that those combinations balance out. And then, okay, now that we've got those combinations balanced out relevant to the size of the pot, which hands do I choose to raise for value and for bluffs? The value part's pretty easy to break down. Let's use that as the forefront, and then we'll create bluffs that make mathematical sense.
Wait,
So,
wait. This is all like nice idea, and also like it'd be like pretty. I mean, this would have been really applicable in the past, but you're saying that this could actually work in the future. But why would you do this instead of use
I didn't do
um,
this instead of use
file solver?
solvers, but this is just what I did before solvers come out. And then once
Oh, you
you've
did.
relied on that, it's like, okay, I have this as a good baseline. Now what can the solvers teach me? Actually, okay, I was making some mistakes here, and here, and whatever. But I don't know. I never really liked the solvers that much, and I didn't understand how to use, or I didn't spend the time to use PySolver or whatever. My friend made a tool where you could get the solution straight away, and I had a bit of a crack at that. But putting all these inputs in and waiting 30 minutes and shit, I was just like, this isn't for me. I don't like this.
Well, it sounds like yeah, it sounds like PioSolver was not something you really wanted to come out. I understand um, you're quite adept at problem solving, or is that true? I should ask. Actually, is that true? Would you consider yourself
I'd say
someone
I'm a
who's
pretty good
quite good?
problem solver. Yeah, and I like to attack problems and if I don't know the answer to problems, I want the answer. Does that make sense? I have a big
Sure,
hunger for
sure.
information.
Well, we're gonna see if we can get to the bottom of a couple bigger problems in a little bit. But I want to ask also. I know that you were in civil engineering before you decided to play poker.
Hmm.
Um, can you tell me, is there any kind of relevance to that? I mean, does this have something to do with
It was
problem solving? I
probably
know
just
I'm
a
on one thing.
lifestyle choice mistake, to be honest. I think
Oh,
there was a bit of pressure from my parents back then to go down this path, and maybe it was something I would have been suited to, but my heart wasn't really in it. So, in essence, I'm just a university dropout. Like I'm
all
sure
right.
a lot
Well,
of us are.
so how'd you find poker then?
I just stumbled into it, basically. Um,
Okay.
when I was in high school, there was a friend of mine who was quite smart, mathematical, very bright guy, and he was playing online poker as a young kid, and he was making maybe $50 an hour or even $100 an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, if my friend Dave is making $50 an hour, and he's like, he's one of the math guys. There's something to this poker business. Does that make sense? At least this was my
Yeah.
thought process. So
Yeah.
then I just started playing for play chips on PokerStars. Not even real money. Maybe I played a home game for like $10 or whatever. I think the first time I played, I won $12, and I was pretty stoked with that. And it sort of just fell into place from there, I guess.
Okay. All right. Um,
Maybe similar to you, mate. You just probably stumbled into it as well. I'm not sure, but
I found it from video games.
yeah, okay.
It's not like that far away from video games, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah. If you think of it like that, it's like you're trying to get a high score on a different type of game, right? Or trying to pass the
Yeah.
levels.
Okay. All right. Well, how does this relate to? I know you're into philosophy from what we talked about. Is there any kind of connection to that? That's just like a total non sequitur for you, or do you see yourself using your skills in philosophy in poker? I know I actually took a philosophy class, and it reminded me a lot of math, actually. Um, but maybe I don't know. Maybe you're really good at it, and you know how to use it in poker, or
Um,
what? Is there any connection there?
I don't know. What I do is I think I ask myself a lot of big questions, and perhaps you do the same thing. And I'm not
Hmm.
particularly comfortable with the fact that I don't know some of the answers to some of the questions. I'm I don't
Oh,
know a lot
sure.
of stuff in life, but the stuff I want to know, I sort of want to know it now. Does that make sense? And I don't
Oh,
mind
yeah, yeah.
digging
Well,
through the
everyone
weeds
wants
to
to
find it.
know it in theory now, right?
But what was that? Sorry.
Everyone wants to, in theory, know it now, right? Like
Yeah,
not,
but maybe not do the
but
work to get it, if that makes
well,
sense.
I would say that I'd say that you you have the desire to want to know it now. But I've read there's a couple perspectives on wanting that I'd like to point out. So first of all, I read this quote that really intrigued me was that one of the most miserable things in life would be to not be able to desire anything. And I'm like, what? Um, this one I don't 100% understand, but I will say this is that
I
if
think I can answer
imagine
that.
if you're playing a video game
Hmm.
and all of a sudden you reach like the end of it, right? And there's
Hmm.
nothing else to do. And you're like, well, shit, this is boring. I want to move on to something else.
Hmm.
So if you had all the answers now, then you may end up
You
being
may
bored,
you may
essentially.
destroy your fulfillment instantly
Yeah, and
because
there's
that's
all
what you were
sorts of
searching
like,
for, right?
yeah, and there's all sorts of like, you like kind of take away the whole potential for enjoyment, and if there's no longer anything to unlock, if there's no longer
Hmm.
anything to inspire to um or to be inspired by, or anything to long to get beyond where you are,
Hmm.
uh or any experience to look forward to, or anything like that. So
That
had
sounds
you
like a
had
miserable existence if you did that.
yeah
But no
well
one does
had
that,
you
right?
had well had you had everything that you wanted right in this instant, um well, actually, we'd want more with the way that the universe actually works, but uh, you may find, like, basically, this is something I've thought about. This is my thoughts on this, but
Okay,
this
let's
whole
hear your thoughts.
idea. Do you see? Well, let's talk about this. Do you understand the importance of patience?
I mean, this is going to sound stupid, but maybe more recently. I don't
Why
think
is
I had
that?
much patience for a very long time. And perhaps still I'm lacking patience, but maybe learning to be patient.
Okay, okay.
I don't know, but I
Well,
was
let's.
happy. Oh, let's put it this way. Let's pose another question to you. Like, you see a lot of people that are out there that are chasing certain goals, yes?
Yeah,
Almost everybody's chasing some type of goal or maybe little goals or whatever. And then you see people that are chasing big goals. Maybe you see some people that are chasing never ending goals and you know who they are. I think
uh-huh.
some people, like, let's pretend you take the pursuit of money, for example. And a lot of
Yeah,
people in poker, gambling, business, whatever, they're on the pursuit of money. But it's sort of like a never ending treadmill where you can chase an apple attached to the end of it and you never reach it. And
yeah.
you can upgrade your net worth a million times over, but you can always go more. And then how much fulfillment do you get from being on that treadmill?
Well, sure. I think this is relevant also to the point that we're at least I had in my head, and I agree. By the way, and this is I had this dilemma myself. It seems like you felt it as well. Is in poker, if it's only gonna be about the money, and this is in a way problem solving. If it's only gonna be about the money, then it essentially, at least for me, it became like running on a treadmill at a certain point. There were no
Mm-hmm.
stakes that were higher to go to, and like even if you were to like keep making money, it would be more interesting, I guess you could say, but then the nature of your experience would change a bit if that was your only goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
And
does.
it might yeah, it might sap out a lot of like, because, well, let's put it this way. I would actually put it the opposite way, that because there are things that matter besides money, there's much more room for experience to exist
Absolutely.
um, beyond that. Um,
Like, why did you
which
get into
is,
poker originally? Probably because you loved it, as well as the fact that you could make money, right?
yeah,
But if you
yeah,
looked at it on like a Venn diagram, there was probably a plethora of things overlapping. One, I enjoy it. Two, I'm learning new things that I can apply elsewhere. Three, maybe
yeah,
your friends are involved. Four,
yeah.
maybe you're making money. Then if it gets to the point where the other parts of the Venn diagram slip away, it's like, okay, you've made some commodity trades now. You've made a trade for
Mhm.
enjoyment. You've made a trade where, okay, you don't get the social joy out of it that you used to.
Hmm.
And then now you're just chasing one thing. It seems like that's a bad deal, right? So I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't played much. I didn't play live poker for like 2.5 years, and I sort of come to the
Hmm.
conclusion that I was making some bad commodity trades, if you will, and was happy to not play. For me, the biggest one was I would
Explain
go.
that. Explain that, because I think I have a guess of what you mean, but the audience may not have this idea of what you mean.
Basically, for me, the biggest one was I'd go overseas and I'd play these tournaments and whatever. And I would enjoy playing the tournaments. I'd enjoy catching up with the people involved in the tournaments. But I would go huge periods of time without sleeping, where I'm
Oh yeah.
clearly sacrificing my health for other things. And then I would just sort of have this attitude where whatever, I was born a bit of an insomniac, like bad luck. Some people have it much worse. I don't care. I'm here to grind. If that's what I've done, I've paid for
Hmm.
my flights and my hotel. Like fuck it.
It sounds
I'll
like
suffer in
some
my chair,
intense
grit my teeth,
willpower.
and I don't care. Like I'm here to play. This
All
pain
right.
is Do you know what I mean? But that's the stupid attitude as well,
Warrior,
huh?
diehard warrior
It's like stab me in my chair
attitude.
now. I'm here to play, but that is so fucking so
Well,
stupid
it's
at the same time.
admirable in many ways. It's just it's admirable. I was like that, and it's hard to balance it a bit. Sometimes it's good to be like that. It's like
Hopefully, I had a bit
money's
of an
uncontrollable.
epiphany when I was in Spain because I went to a pretty bad place where I was not good from sleep deprivation, And then I sort of come to the conclusion that, okay, even if I have these sleeping problems and whatever, and I've had these since before I started playing poker, some of the attitudes I brought into when I was playing poker is not conductive of putting my health first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see that. I just found it interesting that you looked at it as like trading commodities, if that made sense.
Sure.
I want to talk a bit more about that, but I also want to talk about. Why don't you keep talking about your epiphany, also, and like what happened and what did you do about it?
Okay. Let's just say I've had a bunch of insomnia spells, and I feel pretty comfortable talking about this because people who know me good know what I'm like anyway. But I've had a bunch of spells where I've had, say, severe sleep deprivation. So
Uh-huh.
perhaps, like sometimes I've done 6 days, 7 days no sleep, and I'm not taking any drugs or
Wow,
anything to do this. This is not very
that's
good.
intense.
Yeah,
That's
and it's,
crazy.
I'd say here I come from Malaysia where I was average 3 hours a night for 10 nights. Let's just say I averaged 2.5 hours a night for on average maybe 20 nights. And
Yeah.
then things started to go. The thing is, that's not what people should be doing with their health. Do you know what I mean? Sleep is like an integral part of being able to function well as a human, right? It's integral for your
Hmm.
health as well. But I think it's sort of like if you know someone who's an alcoholic, they can function on alcohol better than someone who's not an alcoholic. So someone who's constantly sleep deprived can function better on sleep deprivation than someone who's not constantly sleep deprived. So I can
Oh
sort
yeah.
of play poker in these states, but it doesn't mean I'm not commodity trading something else. Is that what I mean? Let's pretend
Yeah. Yeah.
I gambled or even I was good at poker and I earned some money. I'm paying tolls with my taxes. I'm paying tolls with my mental state. Sorry, not with my
Hmm.
taxes. I'm paying tolls. I'm paying taxes with my health, my physical health,
Yeah.
my mental health.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe even I pay tolls with my friendships in the short term because I'm fucking irritable and shit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because like,
Yeah. Oh, for
so
sure.
that sort of stuff would happen, and then I don't know. It's like, but I've been dealing with this problem for a long time, maybe so since I was 17, 33, and then it's gonna sound pretty stupid, but I was just walking through a park with Michael Adamo, and then it's like,
Hmm.
sounds stupid, but he can verify this happened. A piece of bark fell from a tree and just hit me on the top of the head when I was like, it's sort of like Isaac Newton, the apple hitting him, but it's just this is my own realization that perhaps you're also to blame for your own problems. Does that make sense? So
When the bark hit you on your head, why is that?
I don't know, maybe it just snapped me out of my own stupidity. And I'm hoping. Here's the thing, it might not be a real
It
epiphany,
was
but I've had some
it
wins
was the
since.
magic bark.
The magic bark. If here's the thing, whether it's actual thing or not, if I buy into it a little bit and I get some placebo effect out of it, and then I change my habits, it's worth something. So we'll take it, right?
Hmm.
So basically, since I've got home, I've done some things that I haven't done before. Maybe so. This sounds like something small, but I've had some naps with my girlfriend, which I haven't been able to do. Even sleep in the same bed as my own girlfriend because I'm an insomniac.
Hmm.
So like that's
Yeah.
a win for me. Do you know what I mean? If I haven't done that and I've been with
Yeah.
my partner for over a year, I'm celebrating that win now. I'm stopping to
Yeah.
smell the roses. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so, there's been a
Okay.
few things like that. Slept in the same bed as my girlfriend. I feel like I can relax and be in my own body a bit more. So maybe
Hmm.
taking care. I've maybe put the attitude forward that if I decide to play poker in the future or go somewhere or go overseas or whatever, I'm gonna put my health ahead of that stuff as opposed to the other way around, which is the way I did things forever.
Sure. Sure.
I felt like maybe this makes sense to you. So some people I feel like are very good at life balance, and then other people, perhaps like myself, are pretty poor at that. So what I think I'm
Right.
good at is I'm good at doing one thing at a time, 100%, and I'll do that thing
Hmm.
100%, and I'll sacrifice other things to do it 100%. But then
Sure.
other people are like, they're good at juggling a bunch of balls at once. See, I might be like, I'm playing poker for 2 months. I'm going to put in huge hours. I'll I'll battle the people. I'll study what they do. I'll be on I'll be pretty sharp. I won't be able to turn off. But that's coming from somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
There's that's not necessarily bad. Actually, there's many people who are high functioners or high I think it can make sense to do that as long as it doesn't like hurt the other areas too much long term.
Maybe in bursts
Actually
it's okay.
I've read about and can get behind. I was even thinking to do something similar, but not exactly for poker. I'm all for life balance. I think there's some nuance a bit. Um, but if you want to achieve high results, it's actually really great to focus specifically on that thing. In fact, there's something called that people are a lot of like high functioning entrepreneurs and other people really want to focus. In fact, a lot of spiritual people had these like long periods of isolation,
Mm.
partly to what's the word? To self-inquire and also to be open. It was theorized that they were more open to the universe, to like the you could say the some kind of intuition of the universe. I don't
Because
know if
they
this is
had
true or
periods
not.
of
I don't even know if it's true.
self-isolation. Is that why?
Yeah, yeah.
It does make sense
Uh
because this is what I would interpret from that, and this is just my own, I don't know, brand of philosophy, if you will. But if you have self-isolation, then you get more familiar with yourself, right? So,
yes.
for example, like, let's pretend I studied other people all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't quite understand myself. There's a sort of overlap there where in the middle I have self-comprehension, and then I have comprehension of other individuals that would overlap with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right, for example, I'm here, this is my sphere, and then Jungleman comes in and he overlaps a bit. He spends a bit of time with
Yeah.
me, and I get to understand the Jungleman a bit. But if I don't understand myself, now I'm making some perhaps poor assumptions that I base on you, that I
Mm-hmm.
spawn from my own poor assumptions or understanding of myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you spend a bunch of
Uh,
time with yourself, you comprehend yourself better, you can comprehend others better, right? If you understand your own behavior better, you can understand
I
others'
do
behavior better.
agree. Yeah. I do agree. In fact, I mean, it's worth an experiment. It's like your own personal experiment, and I mean, it's not like people haven't done it in the past. There's all sorts of like people in history that have done such things,
Mm.
and yielded great results. Like, I mean, obviously, there's tales of like, I mean, the Buddha kind of did it. It was more complicated with him, um, but yeah, it's
Have you ever tried it?
somehow an important step in journey. What's that?
Have you ever tried it for yourself?
No, I was considering it.
So what's a
I was,
long time by
I just,
yourself, just out of curiosity, or do you have to be practicing certain other behaviors to get the most out
I
of it?
don't know, but I can tell you, I'm aware of a school in Guatemala where it has the option to do this. But you need to be a bit prepared as well. It's like more or lesser known spiritual sect called Hermeticism. It sounded really interesting.
Okay.
Um, I
What'd
was
you say it's
looking
called?
into that. I
Hermeticism?
just don't know. Huh?
What'd you say it's called again? Sorry.
Hermeticism. It's actually Hermeticism is from
I'm gonna look that up.
the. It's from I believe the Egyptians.
Okay.
It's
I'm gonna
many
Google
of
that
its
quickly.
elements are in many different religions.
Oh,
Actually,
Hermeticism, coming from the term hermit, I guess. But yeah.
I don't think so. It's
No.
not. But anyway, it's kind of like it comes from like the formations of many religions. If you look into the history of all that, it's quite interesting and a lot more involved than people are aware of. Anyway,
It's quite interesting.
yeah, I think basically deep. It's called deep work, is what you've been doing. There's actually a book called it, and if you're interested, yeah, like it's. I was thinking of doing it myself. This sounds like a very effective way to solve a lot of tough problems. This is in fact what people do a lot in order to solve problems or to do a lot of work. And I was thinking to myself, maybe I should go. I should like instead of like hopping around a lot or really focus hard when I am going to focus and like put away a lot of distractions. basically filter out a lot of distractions. Maybe even like shut down Instagram or whatever at some point. Um,
Social media
and
detox.
like, oh yeah,
How
I
many
need one
balls
of
do you think you're
those.
juggling at the moment? If I just did the ball analogy,
Too many, man.
I thought you might
And
be.
inevitably, but I thought like you could get better at juggling them and
Hmm.
all that, and I try
I've
to create
comprehended this too.
systems to deal with them, and then they're basically just, it ends up getting really complicated, and you need other people to do it that are good at like I'm not really good at like picking up details, so I need someone who's gonna be good at that.
Why don't
And
you
it's just gonna like run
study
through all my bullshit,
picking up
huh?
details as one of the balls? Remove a
It
couple of
doesn't.
balls and then learn how to pick up details. I think you can.
It's not that simple. It's because that requires a different way of like functioning. I
Hmm.
don't really function that way. I'm more like the opposite. I am like highly purpose driven,
Yeah.
and I'm just doing things related to the purpose, and like I'm making a bunch of like peripheral mistakes basically, or not noticing the peripheries.
Yeah,
So it's like totally opposite to my strength.
but I think what you do is, if correct me if I'm wrong, you sort of just go in there where you're like, this is my goal. I'm gonna try to get to my goal. I'm gonna do A, B,
Yeah.
C, and D, and try to do a bunch of things at once. And if I make mistakes along the
Yes.
way, whatever, it happens. But you learn from the mistakes anyway, so then you get better later, right?
Uh, yeah, I mean that is essentially my approach in a nutshell. I mean, related to the mistakes, you can look at all these meta mistakes. This is what I'm getting at is like the meta mistake in this situation would be, okay, well, clearly I'm making a lot of peripheral mistakes because I'm just like balls to the wall all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, and I need someone who's gonna like not just going to catch all those little things. There's always little things that you can't think of yourself
Mm.
because you always have limited attention. You can't have infinite attention,
Mm-hmm.
but you need those kinds of people. But yeah, I forget how we got onto this. Yeah, deep work. It's
Deep
actually
work.
a good idea,
I'll look
and
into it.
it's cool that you were actually doing it yourself intuitively.
Well,
That's
I think that I don't know. I think everybody sort of has this narrative, and I'll say the word narrative of like, who am I and how did I get here? Like, I was born there and then I got to here, right? And what happened along the way? And does that make sense? But
yeah,
it is mostly, I think it is a narrative. Does that make sense? Because,
yeah,
like you said, not everybody, you can't catch 100% of the details,
yeah,
right? Like you remember things, but you also forget things. And
yes.
you have some
That's
understanding
the
of
things.
how yourself works or
Uh-huh.
how some concept works, but it's not some not. And I think the world is a bit black and white, to be honest. And I think the shades of grey are just the parts we don't understand yet. Like we don't know how that works. It could be this. It could be that. I don't know. Let's figure it out. But people have judgments as well, which are incorrect. And I have judgments about myself, which are also could be incorrect, right? So
Well, okay.
I want to, if
As a
I go on,
as a guy wearing a shirt that's not just black and white and it's got a lot of shades to it,
yeah,
I may like to challenge that notion
sure,
of your black and white world.
okay.
I feel like I would be the guy who's appropriate to do that.
Oh,
And I
you've
also
got a
got
shirt that
like
has colours on it. So
I
the
got
shirt
some
has
pants that
colours
got some colors.
that are black and white and grey. Yeah, I think that
Yeah, yeah,
conclusion, we measured the colours, we looked at them, and then we said,
yeah.
okay, we've graded them on a scale from 0 to 100. Maybe one side of the scale we got white, one side we got black, and this is every single pixel in there, and this is the colour. Sorry, that's black and white. That's the answer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Logic. We'll get to that one. I think you won this battle, but
It's alright. We got more
we'll have to
battles to play.
get. We'll see if we'll see who wins the war of that one.
Okay.
We'll save that one for later.
Maybe you're right
Because
too, though, because if I walk through life every day seeing everything as black and white and I don't see the colours, maybe you win and I lose. Maybe you get to smell the roses more and who's the real winner?
yeah, we'll throw the roses in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if your philosophy and math can handle the roses. Um,
Yeah.
I do want to talk a bit more about this your sleep deprivation stuff.
Mm.
And about this idea of trading commodities,
Okay.
as you said, because well, first of all, how did you fix it? Because like it's
I
not
don't know
sleeping
if
for
it's fixed
6
yet.
days,
Yeah,
huh?
I don't know if it's fixed yet, first of all.
Yeah,
I think I'm still. Well, this is what I've thought. I've sort of told myself this story that I'm an insomniac and this is who I am, and maybe I was born this way or whatever, but perhaps I was making, for example, like let's pretend I've gone overseas several times and I've decided to play poker. And the general
Yeah.
theme of what would happen would be I would get hyper alert. I wouldn't be able to turn off. I wouldn't be able to turn my brain off and go to sleep at night. Then what I'd do is I'd say to myself, well, this is fine. I can handle this for a bit. And then I'd also say to myself, if I get zero sleep for the night, I don't care. I'll wait till the third night and then I'll consider taking medication or a sedative. Does that make sense? But if I go in there and say that, like, data tells me if I don't sleep the first night, then I just don't sleep for another 2 nights. And then I'll just take medication on the third night. Did I decide to not sleep for 3 nights? Or is that just... Do you understand what I'm saying? Did I already decide not to sleep for 3 nights? Or was I just didn't sleep for 3 nights this time? But then if you do that how many times in a row, like at what point is it my fault that I need to change my strategy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
So there was a few things like this going on. In terms of how did I fix it? Well, I had to remove myself from where I was playing poker for a bit. I needed to be sedated, basically. I couldn't turn my brain off. And then once I got home, it's like, this is what I do. I need to take medication for a bit. And then now I've slept for a few days and I'm basically back to normal. But there's probably, for example, when I was playing in Triton or whatever, I was running around a bit. I would start to have what the doctors would describe as sleep deprivation induced manic episode. Does that make sense? Because if you have that much sleep deprivation, I'm not sure exactly what happens, but you're so fatigued, I think your body gives you some type of kick, right? And then you can have symptoms of mania, at least I do. So I'll be bouncing around everywhere, speaking in 2x speed, going from this idea to that idea. This is, where did I go to make this bad commodity trade? This is the sleep deprivation, obviously, right? Which I'm doing to play poker, perhaps chase money, whatever. But this is a bad commodity trade. I've gone too far in this trade. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
At least anybody on the outside might think that, whereas I've just told myself, this is just what happens when I play poker. This is probably why I didn't play for 2.5 years. Does that make sense? I was happy to not play and not do this to myself.
Yeah. We're gonna tie this into patience, by the way.
Patience, okay.
And even the idea of like balance, it's a bit related.
Okay. Listening.
I've got some thoughts on that, but I like the idea of commodities trade because that's literally what I think that people are doing in a different commodities. One day, I personally kind of had the same realization that you're alluding to, is that quality of health and money and also enjoyment, things like that, they're all kind of like commodities, or even like influence or whatever. They're all kind of like commodities. They basically are. And at some point, it hit me sort of a similar thing to you, but I didn't have sleep deprivation. I had other problems, I guess you could say, but they're a bit more subtle. It hit me that if I focused too much on something like money, etc., the feeling of that would produce diminishing returns.
Of course,
and I, as you said, would sacrifice other commodities, or I noticed that other commodities had value to me. Other aspects in life. And I feel like the reason why I bring this up is I feel like a lot of poker players don't see all those commodities in the games and don't look at poker in that kind of way, in this thing that should be fun. And like the other players that are more casual have the more natural tendency to make it that way, and higher stakes game players are almost pushed towards making it that way, which makes sense.
I think you're right.
But I think a lot of players that are in it for the money don't realize also many of the commodities they sacrifice in order to get for the money, and also sometimes that even hurt their bottom line, just as sleep deprivation did for you. Like, for
Maybe it helped me.
example, I mean, one example that's not that obvious. What'd you say?
I said maybe it helped me, the sleep deprivation. For the bottom line, but for one commodity at a time, do you understand? Maybe I
Oh,
punished all the other commodities and then I won in that commodity. Does that
oh
make
yeah,
sense?
sure.
Yeah, so who
Yeah.
probably didn't win, really.
Um. So Uh, I mean, this is kind of the way that I looked at, and maybe you can get behind this also. This is the way that I looked at doing something like getting really mad at the poker table
Mm-hmm.
when you lost a hand, and I was guilty of this myself,
Mm-hmm.
or or just being a not nice person at the poker table on the whole. Do you see how doing that sacrifices? First of all, it actually does sacrifice money in the long run, and it
Yeah, if you
does
play worse, for
sacrifice a
sure.
different kind of commodity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sacrifices your peace of mind and happiness, presuming you're doing it at the poker table, you're actually getting angry. Yeah, for sure. I think you make some really good points with what you said before, how people potentially at the high stakes, I can't say that they are because I don't really know what they're feeling or thinking, but if they're going in there playing and they're saying, I have to be in this condition so I can make the most money possible purely, is why they're playing the game, and they're sort of
Hmm.
going in there and not enjoying it or playing when they don't want to play, they've sort of already sold some of their soul a little bit because what they like, this is what I think, right? If you play the money game and you just keep playing it and playing it and playing it, at what point do you get out of the money game and into the happiness game? If
Hmm.
there's another game to be played, like, I don't think anybody's like, oh man, like, so I was on my deathbed and I was just thinking to myself, why didn't I play that 10k from, like, what, like, or why didn't I grind that series from the start? It's like, that's not what people think. The word grind wouldn't even come into their conversation. It's like, why didn't I spend more time doing the things I loved? Which is usually spend time with your family for most people. Spend time on
Hmm.
your passion projects, whatever. Pursue some dream that maybe you just let go because it was risky or whatever. I think these are
Hmm.
the questions people ask on their deathbed, probably. So if you're doing something like, I don't know, pursuing playing some game, you're playing poker all the time purely for money, you're doing some other thing purely for money, business, you're working 70 hours a
Yeah.
week, 80 hours a week, you don't enjoy it, but you make more money that way. It's like, this is the type of shit you're probably just going to regret on your deathbed. So at what, and also like if you have some money, because I sort of told myself a story, if I get to this amount of money, I'll probably just stop playing this game. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And not to
Yeah.
say that I don't love poker. I think it's a beautiful game, and I want to keep playing it, but just not the way I used to do it. Does that make sense? At what point
Yeah.
do you get out of that game and into the happiness game? And then if you stop doing that, which I think I was guilty of doing, I'll put my hand up and say I kept playing the game in a non-healthy way for a while. Like, now I'm selling my soul a bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm
Yeah.
sacrificing my happiness to do it. So why am I even doing it?
Yeah. Well, that is selling your soul. That is exactly that's a very light version of selling your soul, in my opinion.
Yeah. So like now my strategy if I play poker is I'm playing it for pure enjoyment. And I don't have to play from the start to make the most money. And I don't have to play the hours that give me sleep deprivation. And I'll do the things
Yeah.
in the day that are important to my health and for my happiness. So then it's like, now I'm in the right game. I'm in the happiness game. This is the way I should be been playing. If I wake up in the
Hmm.
morning and then some days you're not going to have a good day. Some days you're going to have a bad day. Shit happens, right? But if I have X amount of happiness that I can net out of that day, why don't I strive to take 100% happiness out of that day instead of 100% equity out of that day with money?
Sure. Well,
Let
you can also, like, I think. Go ahead.
Well, it's like there's going to be a bunch of things that overlap in that Venn diagram or decision points you have throughout the day.
Oh, for sure.
But if you make the
Yeah.
decisions that I'll get to that game early and I'll do this and I'll do that, and then you're stressed or whatever, and you're not sleeping or what problems you have, you don't exercise, you don't eat properly, whatever decisions, or you don't do something that's important to you, it's like these are all decision points where you've affected the amount of happiness that you could take out of that day. When really what you should probably do is strive to increase your happiness, right?
Yeah. Um, I agree. I want to add a couple more commodities to the list, or a couple more parameters, if you will,
I'm interested.
about that are parts of that happiness. that I think people don't necessarily see. And I'd also like to point out that a lot of people will like do this thing where they're like, and I'm guilty of it too. It's hard to like get out of bad habits where they'll like think these kinds of thoughts and get in these sorts of like mental states where they sacrifice. And this is just looking at it from the personal way of look. This is just looking at your own self. They'll get in these states that, I mean, you even said it yourself. They sacrifice their happiness, but in my mind, this is like when you're playing the happiness game. This is like using a bad strategy, or it's even like not taking up like positive free rolls. You can do a lot of things to increase your happiness that are essentially like positive free rolls in the game. Like you can go in there and you can just like I don't know, you could just totally tune out, or you could like bring a good attitude to the table, sort of thing. I mean, you could also like, I mean, it's kind of similar to going out and the idea of not putting any effort in at all versus like, okay, I'm gonna put in some effort and I'm gonna try to have a fun time, sort of thing. If you know what I mean? Because if you try to have a fun time, if you don't try to have a fun time, it's almost like, well, it's not putting in. It's like putting in no effort. It's like taking like a weak, tight strategy, if that makes sense.
A weak, tight strategy to fun.
Yeah.
You
and,
go out and you net all that fun, huh? You put the fucking costume on. You got the costume on, you're netting all the fun, huh? At the final table, you're not messing around.
Well, I'm spicing up. I'm using loose aggressive. I would say loose aggressive is not actually for everyone on second thought, but like probably it's suboptimal to, or excuse me, weak tight is probably suboptimal in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
There's really a lot of indication of that. But like that's one comparison I'd like to make. But also when you bring a grumpy strategy or bring a grumpy like a way of dealing with things at the table, you know, you'll have this influence on other people, which you can easily see that will eventually come back to you. That will eventually, like, they're going to like you less. They're going to not want to play with you as much. They're going to return it by being grumpy themselves. I mean, that's certainly true. And all that is going to kind of perpetuate this grumpiness a bit. Or, like, make you lose in the happiness game and probably make you lose in the financial game too.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Do you agree?
Yeah, it does. I don't think I've been guilty of taking grumpiness to the table per se. Maybe a little bit if I'm in one of my manic states. I feel like when I go to play, one of the things I like about playing live poker is I get to chat to the people at the table. I'm not one of the high roller guys that wants to sit there and just like not talk with my headphones on. I want to chat to everybody. And to be honest, like, that's one of the things I get the most out of it. When I'm like this and I'm a bit more calmed down and I'm slept, it's sleeping. It's probably tolerable for other people. I knew when I was in Cyprus, I was fucking all over the shop asking philosophical questions. I was probably getting on people's nerves. I was probably being... I was. Sorry, guys. And they were all pretty good about it, but like, I remember like my friend pointed
both of those, by the way. I've done... Go ahead.
Yeah, like my friend said something to me like, you're sort of polarizing this chat here. He's watching one of the videos or whatever. And then I was like, yeah, I can sort of put my hand up later and say I was being a bit of an annoying prick. This is not usually what I'm like. But, sorry, it is what it is. If you get that much sleep deprivation, sleep deprivation's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, it is important also to know when the chats are fitting the situation. That's a important trait. I've definitely pissed off people asking deep questions a little bit, but I was aware of it for the most part, and I've absolutely made all the grumpy mistakes. I had a slow mental shift, I guess you could say. But like, also, even if chatting's not for everyone, I mean, there's other different kinds of ways of being fun that don't really require. I mean, it's hard for me to answer for everyone, but like, you can play with the chips or whatever. I mean, there's a few different outlets you could say that, in a sense, do actually expand the game.
Yeah, I think that's true.
But it's good that, by the way, actually, you go ahead first.
No, I just said I think that's true. Keep on going.
I was gonna say that it's good that you're one of the people that is trying to talk, because man, is it like a ghost town every time I stroll up there. I feel you. I feel like I'm playing. I feel like I'm in the like in a Terminator series or something. When I end up at the table,
Yeah,
it's like really,
I think it's a high stress environment where these people the players don't want to give much away, which you can understand, and then also they are busy concentrating on a lot of things at once. That's true. So, but like, I don't know. I'm like, I haven't fucking played for a while, guys. I want to come for a chat. It's been 2.5 years. What's going on? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm thinking.
yeah.
But at the same time, they're playing for a lot of money, so you can't. Especially like I was like annoying people a bit on the bubble, and then like I was like, I don't know, like I'm having fun here, like I want to chat, but then at the same time, like these guys are playing for a lot of money. I'm playing for a lot of money too, obviously, but I was there to have fun. Does that make sense? This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It's like,
I, yeah. I think it should be. I mean, I think it's generally good to at least enjoy what you're doing. I think I think in the tournaments it doesn't matter as much. I think it matters more for TV and like more
that
when you're
happens. Yeah.
playing in high stakes games, where when you become the guy who's like trying really die hard to win, that's what pisses people off. Like in a competitive setting, fine, right? Compete, but if you're in a setting with a bunch of VIPs or if you're on TV where now you're kind of like a showman, um, or you're like, the people coming to play themselves aren't there to like battle you out. It's almost like disrespectful to be like fully like, full cutthroat mode. Disrespectful is an exaggeration, but it's not. A better way of looking at it would be it's like forfeiting a lot of EV. You can say
Are
a
you
lot of
saying because
happiness.
like the cameras are on and stuff, you sort of owe it to the public to provide an entertainment service? Is that what you're getting at?
That's the moralistic view. I would say that it's a healthier strategy than not doing that for
Mm-hmm.
many reasons. Um, Now, I don't know how to get many of the poker players excited about that. And it's more true for me, especially, or people with an actual name. But you could give the incentive of like, you could look at it as like, if for the person who's has a positive way of looking at things, is like, oh, like I want to have fun and I want to put on a show, or I want to give the people watching an experience that's positive for them, instead of like having them just watch some guy that they don't know a thing about, just like be really quiet and focus really hard on the game
They
and not
want they
really
want
do
the
a
guy in
whole
the
lot.
wrestling outfit at the final table who's here to win it back to back, and he's not taking any prisoners. That's what they want, yeah.
Yeah. It's something for the public, you can say. It's like a gesture to the public and to the game. That's one way of looking at
This
it.
is probably an underappreciated part of what Phil Hellmuth does, right? A lot of people probably appreciate that, and then a lot of people don't
No,
partake in
Phil
that. But
Phil
he would
Hellmuth
be
does
winning
a lot of
huge
smart.
with a
What's
lot
that?
of like Phil would be winning huge with a lot of the people that they're tuning in with poker for entertainment. They want to wind down and have fun, and they want to be entertained. And Phil Hellmuth
Yeah,
provides them with some entertainment. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah.
some of
No,
the other
Phil
people want
Hellmuth.
to learn poker, and they don't mind listening to the person who says nothing but plays a bit different. Do you know what I mean? It
Sure.
depends. There's something for everybody, but he does some good stuff that not a lot of people are doing. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally, you want to like be invisible. There are some incentives where that's really appropriate. Usually, more like a less than zero sum situation, I would say, where you just like kind of have to let the thing die.
Okay.
I can see that being the case, but that's probably a little vague. I'm just saying it may
I
be
can see what you're talking
optimal
about.
sometimes to be silent, but more in not just silent with the things that you say, but with your actions. But that's more in situations where you have to like get in and get out. Is what I mean to say. With Phil Hellmuth, yeah, I mean he does a lot of smart things that a lot of players don't do, particularly in exactly those kinds of realms. He gives a lot of value to the tables, and just to people in general. He's a lot less stingy than most poker players are not generous people. I would say
He
they're
does
like,
stuff for charity and stuff like that. I know that for sure.
well, I wasn't even thinking about that. I didn't even realize he did that. But like,
Well, yeah. I can just
um,
say firsthand, like, for example,
oh,
when the Australian bushfires run, he donated to that and he doesn't have to. Do you know what I mean? He does some stuff.
okay.
So I think he's a generous person for sure.
Well,
But
not just that, but he'll get the table talking, and he's just doing it like just to be just to put on more of a show and like to actually showcase some people and that kind of thing. It's an act of generosity.
okay.
And he helped to support my podcast from the beginning. He does gestures like that all the time. These kinds of favors. It's actually a better. I would say it's a healthier strategy that a lot of business people understand, and that a lot of poker players don't really see that there are a lot of opportunities for this in poker, if that makes sense.
I'd say, like, if you looked at... I'm not a social media guy at all, really. But I can see how people can use social media to sort of leverage the platform they have. So if you look at people in poker that have done that, you can't say he hasn't done a fantastic job of it if that was his goal. Does that make sense?
Oh, well, he did not do that well.
No, no,
He
no.
didn't do that. He
You don't
didn't.
think Phil's done a
What?
good job at that? How's he not? He's got a huge name in poker.
Not through social media.
Ah.
He's got it because of his accomplishments. Because he's got like
Oh,
14
yeah.
bracelets,
But
and
also,
because
he's active at that stuff
he
too.
puts himself out
He
there.
does put effort into the stuff he does, and he's happy to sort of make, like, he'll make a big interest at the WSOP. He gets on camera because, one, he speaks, and two, he's Phil Hellmuth, which just automatically puts him separate from a lot of the guys, right? So I
Yeah, yeah.
definitely don't agree with all the stuff he says, but you got to give him some credit in some of the areas too, I think.
Oh, he's definitely got a lot of credit. I mean, somehow he's winning with a very unconventional approach. I mean, I guess that's
The white magic, huh?
something as well, huh?
Yeah, there's probably something to the white magic too.
Yeah, I'd say so. I
Yeah, I
think
think
he's
so.
quite good against bad players.
I think so too.
I think there's a lot of non-CMG potential in that. I want to get back to this idea of patience a little bit. I think that's an idea worth discussing,
Patience.
and how that relates to trading commodities.
Okay.
Because, and this has been, it seems like this is a mistake that we've both been alluding to that we can make, is that we've pushed ourselves too hard at the point at which other commodities would crash. Would you say that's true?
I'm definitely guilty of that. I don't know what you've done specifically, but I'll believe you if you say it.
Okay. And part of me was thinking to myself well, you said the reason why I said that was partly because you said that you just basically didn't sleep and you just played and grinded and grinded.
Yeah, I'm guilty of it for sure. I just don't know exactly what you did, is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, I'm getting to that. I have the tendency on the whole, and you've alluded to it, actually. You said, have you got a million balls juggling around?
You gotta drop a ball eventually, huh?
Yeah, I drop balls for sure. And that's like, it's actually a pretty overarching issue with my personality, and I'm not very good at dealing with it. But I'll go to the gym and I'll lift too heavy, as it turns out, or I'll work out too hard, but I'll be exhausted later, and it'll like mess up my routine a little bit. Or I'll travel to all these places and just be like completely relentless with it. And I'm not sure what the real compromise is because it feels like I've got too many things to do. But basically, another example for me would be I eat a little bit too fast. I do a lot of things too fast, and it causes me to make careless mistakes. But I'm trying to figure out how to deal with it.
I can come back to
But
that thing that you said before about the fulfillment and knowing all the answers. If you all of a
What's that?
sudden, well, remember what you said before? You said if I all of a sudden knew all the answers, it would that wouldn't be good for our fulfillment, and then it's impossible to do anyway, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
if we
it
knew all
seems
the
like you're.
answers, we'd be less fulfilled. If you all of a sudden got perfect at all the balls you were juggling to the point where you did them 100% and never made a mistake, would you even want to juggle those balls anymore?
I think you're right. I think there's also a general parallel as well that you're kind of seeing, which is that, well, maybe you can say it in that like knowing all the answers and also fulfilling all these things is all kind of the same thing. It's like grasping too much at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
If that
what I
makes
think of is
sense.
like, let's pretend I'm someone that seeks knowledge and I am that person. I want to know the answers. If someone asks me a question, I don't know the answer, I want the answer. And I sort of want it now. Does that make sense? But
Yeah.
by that logic, like what's happening right now is there's a finite amount of information that exists in the universe, at least I would perceive there to be. But given that people are doing stuff all over the world right now, like I just clicked my fingers, the amount of information that exists expands. Would you say that's true?
Mm-hmm.
So it's impossible to know all the
Yes.
answers, and even if you had them all, a second later you wouldn't, because a bunch of stuff happened. So, like, there's a finite amount of understanding of the tasks that you want to get good at, but over time, more understanding would come to these tasks. You'd be able to do them slightly better. I think this is part of the reason why, like, people get better at things over time, not just like academically speaking, but also in sports, because they harness the information and they execute with that information to when they're approaching, like if they're doing it now at say 70 or 80% of what's possible, they start to approach on some type of curve towards 100 but not reaching 100. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense? Maybe it's like a logarithmic curve that plateaus towards 100. I don't know the answer, but
It's
go
I think it's logarithmic.
it would make sense to
Logarithmic.
be logarithmic. But if 100's moving away from 100, it's like still logarithmic, but not reaching 100. So going back to your thing with juggling, this is what I thought. So you're juggling a lot of balls, so you would be somewhat good at juggling. Um, if
Maybe I
I
should try juggling.
This is what it probably wouldn't hurt, right? This is what I thought, right? So I made this example to someone the other day. I'm someone that would be terrible at juggling multiple life balls, so to speak, but good at doing one thing at once 100%. And I'll do that thing 100%. I'll take all the details. I won't miss them, and I don't mind sacrificing to get them. Does that make sense? So the times when I'm going to the gym, which is half the time, I'm all in. Like, these are the
Mm-hmm.
details. I know how to control my hormones. I'll eat this amount of calories. I'll do the hill sprints on top of this. I'll wake up. I'll get sun in the morning. I'll eat the right food. I'll do push pull legs so I can elevate my testosterone. I'll squat to full depth. I'll pause there. I don't care. I'll sacrifice. All right. Now I'm playing now I'm burnt out from gym. I'm done. I got burnt out. I went too hard. Now I'm playing poker. Then I stop playing poker and I'm doing something else. This is not life balance, you know what I mean? But what you're doing is you're
Mm-hmm.
doing the opposite. You're juggling a lot of balls. You're like, yeah, I'm juggling 10, 12 balls. I don't know how many. And then eventually it's like, that's a lot of balls. Maybe you drop a ball. So I think what I do is I like to study a lot of things at once because I want to know the answers. But let's pretend we take juggling and I studied juggling. This is the example I made to someone else. And I said, this is how juggling works. This is the physics of throwing one ball up and catching it in the other hand. If you add extra balls into the mix, it would look like this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this is what the balls would look like, but I don't know what the other side of the ball looks like because I can't see it because the light's not hitting the sun, hit that side of the ball. But I can comprehend that it probably looks like this. And maybe I can explain juggling really well because I study juggling, but until I actually juggle once, how much do I understand juggling? Am I actually good at juggling until I've tried juggling? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and I feel
I think
like
so.
I don't have life balance. Maybe I should just try having life balance, and I won't be good at it because it might be a muscle I can train, or just like juggling. But if I start a little bit and just stay consistent every day, then maybe I can break some of these bad habits I had, right?
Well, I think that the best solution is probably a mix of the two. The irony of this whole thing is that I was thinking of doing what you were doing, and I was trying to think to myself, how do I juggle all these balls and pick? Okay, well, this ball, I'm really gonna get really good at that. I'm gonna do like 6 tricks with this ball.
Yeah.
But I want to do all. Well, let's put it like this: I want to be able to do like I want to be a master juggler, but I got to learn how to juggle these balls in a certain kind of way.
I think you have to throw a
And
couple of balls away to do it personally, but it's up to
well,
you.
that's what I'm getting at. That's what you were doing. You were like going
Yeah.
super hard in the gym or whatever. Um, I was saying it sounded like you're going too hard, but the focus was good.
The focus
It
was good.
sounded like
Definitely.
that the focus was like because you were focusing so hard, you're getting results, I presume. Uh, as long as you weren't like pushing it too hard each day, I guess. But I'm saying like it might make sense to like change the juggling strategies up a little bit and just not get too burnt out. It's two ideas: to not get too burnt out, and also to pick something to focus on. Have a little juggling going on the side. Maybe three ideas.
Yeah, maybe you should ask yourself, okay, I'm a juggler, but this is too many balls. Which of the balls I value the most? I'm going to this is my best ball. I want to juggle this one for sure. I'll spend a little bit more time juggling. I'll learn some more tricks with this one, but then I need to keep these balls in the mix. Maybe I'll put these ones on the back bench for later. And then I'll practice a little bit of juggling on the side, and then maybe I can add these balls back in the mix when I get better. I don't know.
Well, you got to figure out which ball is the most important. Maybe you like get really, you focus on that ball for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, that's your favorite ball. But then you're like, you know what? I think it'd be really valuable, and like maybe people would enjoy it a bit more if I juggle with these balls too. So you put that one down for a little bit. You still like it, but then you like start juggling with other balls.
You use rotational policies on the balls. That's good. I like it.
Yeah, rotational policies. Yeah, there we go.
It's good.
Okay. I feel like we're almost getting somewhere with the juggling balls strategy. We can create our own juggling ball theorem, you could say. Juggling ball method.
We should actually just put a little bit of time aside. Maybe say we put 15 minutes aside 3 days a week. Let's actually try juggling and see if it helps us. Why not?
I don't mind trying juggling. I don't know where to fit that one in. I mean, to be fair, I was like doing something kind of similar, because it's just how my mind works, the other day, where I thought, it'd be cool because I was practicing this. I had these two sticks that are good for this Filipino martial art, and I was walking down the street.
Okay.
And I thought what would be cool is if I could like spin them around and put on a show with them.
Okay.
Maybe I could just like walk down the street and just practice juggling.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe, I presume, because you're doing a lot of stuff at the moment, I presume you spend a lot of time on the phone. Is that true?
Yeah.
Do you ever put the phone on speaker, or could you put the phone on speaker? If you're by yourself, I don't see any harm, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you just juggle when you do that? And who cares if you have to pick up the balls off the ground, as long as you can get the message across to the person you're speaking to. Now you've got passive juggling. This is free time, free commodity in there.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you want to start juggling too, we can put it. We can be the jugglers.
All right, I'll give you 15 minutes 3 times a week, and we'll go from there. If we don't get any improvement on the rest of it, then maybe no juggling for us. But I'll try.
Okay. Well, a couple ideas. So, I'm in for the ball juggling, at least a little bit. I'll try it. Why not?
I'll try. Okay.
What else? There's a lot of balls being juggled here. I'm a little confused. So, I think there might be something to this idea of a strategy of like combining all three. My concern, particularly with multitasking in that kind of way, is this is getting into the realm of like maximizing self growth and being super efficient and all that. But there's if it might be the case. If you're doing something like having like a phone call and trying to juggle, I'm worried a little bit that your bandwidth may be a little bit too divided, and it may be suboptimal to do that in comparison to doing. I don't know if there's like any situation where that's not suboptimal to, where you're not like really good at it, at least really good at either, having a really basic conversation.
I get what you're saying. Maybe you need to do some pure juggling first before you add in the phone call.
Well, it just seems like it makes sense to multitask when things cost low bandwidth. Like you can have a conversation that's deep while you're walking down the street, because walking is technically multi-counting, but not multi-counting.
You're multitasking. That's right.
Multitasking.
Yeah. You're spreading your resources of your brain, and you're choosing to walk. You're using your cerebellum. You're doing some of these ones, and then you're also having a philosophical conversation. So yeah.
Well, maybe
would you ever listen to music for the pure enjoyment of listening to music just by yourself?
Yeah.
Why don't you listen to some music when you juggle? You can do 2 things at once.
I do that. I do that all the time.
Oh, there you
essentially.
Go. You're in business.
Yeah. Well, it's just a matter of like not dividing your bandwidth between complicated activities. This isn't self growth, or this is like a big part of maximizing.
Dan Smith gave me a good one. He said, for example, like if I get pretty wide, I can't turn off. Meditation could be good, right? And I have had some success with meditation, although I find that I don't do it that often, and maybe it takes me a little bit to get used to it. He said try walking meditation. So that's a nice spot where we get some exercise in because we're walking. We can do the meditation so we can get some mindfulness per se. And then you can also just add some nature in, which makes you feel good, right?
Yeah, sure. I would like to learn some walking meditation myself. I took a Tai Chi lesson, which is kind of similar. It's moving meditation. It's a
Yeah, that
little,
makes sense.
it's different. Let's put it that way. But
That makes sense.
I would keep doing it. Like you can eventually kick someone's ass in it if you do it enough.
You kick
Also,
someone's ass at
learn
moving
some-
meditation.
Yeah, kick someone's ass moving like a feather. Would be pretty interesting.
All right.
Um,
Yeah, I've seen people doing Tai Chi before.
how this all relates to patience is there's always essentially, since every like path of progression is this is just what I think about patience, is that every path of progression and every feeling really is all defined relative to each other. So it seems like if you, I mean, this is just my idea about balance and patience. It seems like if you keep pushing yourself too hard, by definition of what pushing yourself really means is that you're going faster than a rate than you're actually used to. You will actually you'll necessarily exhaust yourself, which complicates the whole process of things that you're doing.
You sort of must exhaust yourself, right? Because if you're pushing yourself past the point which you can naturally maintain, that has to come from somewhere, right? For example, if I go out and I have 20 drinks of alcohol and I feel pretty good and whatever and loose and whatever that night, like I think that is a commodity trade too, right? I'm borrowing some happiness from tomorrow, or I'm borrowing lower inhibitions for a bit of pain tomorrow, and my organs are going to pay those tolls because I've got to process that alcohol, which is poison to a degree. Not that I don't drink; I drink sometimes, right? Back in the day, I used to pound them. Like I'm from I don't know. I'm not from like Melbourne. I'm from like a bit of a rougher area. Like me and the boys used to go out and just pound 20 drinks a night. This is like standard that you do on a weekend, right? But then my organs are paying those tolls for the night before, right? So I think if you go past a speed that you can maintain, then you sort of have to pay that toll later.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And that's where patience and balance really come into play. And kind of it just has to, from my point of view, it has to be that way. It has to be like, it's not something that is because of the arbitrary way the universe works. It's just, that's just how things essentially, I don't know how to explain. It's like it's just how like the dualities of trying too hard and not trying hard enough just worked out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you want to find the spot in the middle where you try the right amount, right? Because you can always like I can always try a bit harder, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's good. You want to try the right amount where I don't know, you feel like it's, because if you try too hard, maybe it makes you stressed, maybe it makes you anxious, maybe it makes you sleep bad, maybe, maybe your health suffers. If you don't try enough, maybe you feel guilty about not trying, and then maybe your mental health suffers, and then now you're also stressed or anxious, or feel guilty about not trying, whatever. You want to find the place in the middle. How to find that place in the middle? I don't know the answer to that. It's pretty hard, right? To be centered,
really
so
knows.
to speak, or be enlightened or whatever you want, but...
There are situations where it does make sense to borrow from the future a little bit, like if it's necessary, if like the commodities are kind of messed up or the market's messed up, I guess you could say.
If the market's got it wrong.
Well, maybe my analogy is not too good, but basically, let's use a poker analogy. Imagine like there's like an incredible game that's going on, and I've actually played a session myself that was about 72 hours where the game was incredible, and I sacrificed
You stayed up for
my
3 days?
yeah, I sat there for 3 days, and the game was like 1 million buy-in, $1 million buy-in or so. No,
Yeah.
I think the guy, it was something like that. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think I ended up losing. I ended up losing in the game for sure.
Yeah, it
Um,
doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. It depends how good the game is, I guess, right? How good
the
the
game is
game is
good.
relative, because this is maybe I'm not the right person to ask this question, because the answers I would have given before is not good. I know, like in Macau, I'll just play until people quit basically a lot, which is bad. But then the way it worked in Macau is if the game quit short-handed or four-handed or whatever, or other people quit, you just top the list for the next day. So I'll just be like, whatever. I do a 35-hour session now, and then I get up in 7 hours, and then the game's on, and I'm at the top of the list. Like, so if I do 100
Yeah,
hours in 3 sessions, like, who cares? So I'm probably not the person to ask. But I think if the stakes are high enough and the win rate is high enough, you can justify it because you can just take a bunch of time off, right? Or you
yeah.
don't get this spot again, or maybe you can do something with that money. It depends what you want to do with it as well. If you're
Well,
just
yeah.
adding it
I
to
mean,
the
that
rest and you
doesn't.
don't need it, then maybe it's not the best decision.
Sure. Well, obviously, that situation isn't just like all money related. There's all sorts of situations where that can make sense, where you have
Mm.
to like. I mean, even like in some situations where you have to stay up all night and finish an exam, like it can make sense to do that. Although
Cram. You used to do those
there are
ones? I bet you
obviously,
did.
of course, I did.
Yeah.
I mean, there are of course situations where that let me see that what was I gonna say? I mean, obviously, that was not the ideal situation to get in, but like optimal play for the moment, you got to do what you got to do.
Once you get there, it's time to go now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The
Sometimes
the
you
the
sometimes
exam
you just
starts
get
in
there.
7 hours. It's time to put in some work with the 7 hours we got.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel you.
yeah. Um, I never personally bought too much into the school of thought that was like it's all just about balance, man. Um, I mean, for me, it was really compelling to see that logically speaking, if you look at the other alternative trajectories,
Hmm.
that balance, at least for the most part, is the optimal strategy.
Mm.
You can say of not pushing too hard and using yeah using a fairly aggressive strategy, but not a moderately aggressive strategy, you could say.
Well, I think what you can do is you can use hyperboles, or like you can play someone on either end of the spectrum, where they're just like if that you had someone that was just like all in on one of the strategies, then you see that it sort of fails catastrophically. So
Oh
then you can
yeah,
come to the
hyperboles.
conclusion that being in the middle is pretty good.
Um, yeah, that's actually a great point. Is that using hyperbole um, to find some conclusions is a great practice. That's actually getting back to the idea of poker. That one thing that we had in common is I remember you said you would ask questions, or you'd have all these questions that you'd be asking you didn't know the answers to. It sounds like you were asking them in your poker theory as
Definitely.
well. Um, but like you could see how there are certain issues in the poker theory if things were taken out to hyperbole. Uh,
Yeah,
trying to
I
think of an
agree with you.
example.
I think this is part of the
Um,
reason you'd be happy to go against what you think the theory is sometimes if it's not right versus your opponent, right?
yeah. Well, there's all sorts of caveats, right?
Mm.
Um, but I mean, one obvious example would be someone might say that aggression's always good. I mean, you could obviously take a super aggressive route all the time and see how that pays off for you. But you'd win at the red line, I guess, if you did
Yeah,
that.
you can definitely do that, and that comes at a cost probably at the blue line. But you could take some opponent and say that if I check, they always go to that theory and they say that being aggressive is always the correct route to the point that they're grossly over-aggressive. Maybe you should check to that opponent 100% of the time and then just punish them by loading the pot further with a wider range of value raises. And then you should just check call them with a wider range because they're taking it too far, right? So you can, if anybody goes on too far of one end of the spectrum of what they think correct play is, but it's not correct, then you can just punish them on the other side. I think that's the way it works, yeah. This is why I don't buy into the necessary... I mean, I think solves are a fantastic tool. I do think they can come up with pretty pure answers in spots and they can come up with good exploitative answers. But I think theory, in terms of pure theory, is one side of what poker is a sphere. And then if I have my pure theory and it's here, and then it's designed to automatically exploit my opponents when they stray from what a good strategy is, on the other side, it's like, but my opponent is also butchering A, B, C, and D, so why don't I just catch him butchering that and then punish them harder? If you only use this side of the sphere, then you would sort of cap yourself. No, at least this is my understanding of the way the game works. This is what I think.
Right. Yeah. If you only use GTO, then or the game theory, you lose a lot of value that you could otherwise be gaining.
I think so too. This is what I think for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually a good example of what we're just talking about, is of taking something out to hyperbole. It's like, always play GTO, or there's no other value other than GTO, and like, here it is. Here's the example. Someone just plays insane.
I promise you, all the players in the super high rollers are playing a very strong brand of poker, and they're all making mistakes. Sorry. And anybody who says otherwise doesn't know what's going on. And not to say I'm not making mistakes. I'll put my hand up and say I'm sure I make plenty. But I can see the mistakes they're making, and I'm sure they can see the mistakes I'm making. But nobody gets it perfect because they're not fucking computers. They're humans.
But, well, I don't think even the idea of perfection makes sense, even for a computer, if that makes sense. Even at least, there's two different kinds of imperfection.
PySolver would be inherently flawed because you have X amount of computing power, and you use the computing power you have to use a finite amount of sizings. And then what happens is you play a near approaching perfect game because you don't solve to zero, usually, with a finite amount of sizings and a finite amount of reactions to said sizings. If you solve for every single sizing, then what you've got is perfect poker, which they don't have because it's too much computing power and it costs money. So this is just straight facts, in my opinion. Now, people can debate me on that, but I don't know. Yeah, it's like...
I'd like to... point out that perfection in that sense, I mean, definitely will never be perfect in the sense of not making the computational careless mistakes of computers. But if you look at computers as like these like finite things that just are just what they are, if you know what I mean. Like, if you look at them as though like a coffee machine is just going to make coffee, but it's going to make coffee really well. It's going to make coffee a lot better than... if it's a great coffee machine, it's gonna make coffee a lot better than like any human is ever gonna do. It'll be perfect in that sense.
I definitely, I agree with you.
It will, but as we're just saying, it's limited in that capacity. And when you think of perfect in the sense of like having all the right traits for a person, or like having the perfect game in terms of like just knowing what to do in every single situation, that I don't think that perfection really exists, even for a computer, if that makes sense. How can that exist? Because it like a computer, like it just doesn't exist, period, because there are too many, because there's infinite situations. There's always going to be something else that comes up, and I mean, so
I think computers will get better at doing it, but it's just like they're sort of going to approach, do you understand? They're going to approach 100% but not reach it like before. Like back in the day, I remember they're like, oh, we've got opening ranges for tournaments and we got shove ranges for 15 blinds. And I'm like, when is this stuff going to do post-flop? And they're like, oh, no, it's not going to do post-flop. It's like, well, why not? Because there's too much stuff going on. It's like, yeah, but the computing power is going up, so why not? This is what I thought, anyway.
Yeah. No, I do think so, but here's the thing, is that is that it's like impossible to. At least this is what I think, because thinking about this now, I'm not so sure I know what I'm talking about. But I can say something from research, which appears to be true.
Okay.
AI is not my specialty,
Mm-hmm.
but one thing is that you can't like what has happened in this situation is that basically computers handled a bracket of reality, and it was like for whatever reason people are like the bracket of reality got way bigger, and then the for some reason people said, oh, because it handled this small bracket and this bracket's so small it can't handle this bigger bracket. And of course it did, because like what's really the difference? And but the thing is that
uh,
where computers uh, it appears that, I mean, this is like gets into the actual aspect of AI. Just my personal guess is that because reality isn't that linear, it's not like you just put like
it's not linear.
variables in a box and then that's it. It's
Mm.
like there's all these. It's much more complicated than that, and there's like a lot of cross things that apply in different fields, and there's always like the value of different perspectives, and
Mm-hmm.
basically it's just not linear at all.
No,
And
it can't be.
even scalability itself is still putting reality in a box, if that makes
Mm.
sense. And computers are really good at handling boxes. Uh,
Yeah. Let
as
me
it,
ask you a question. What time is it where you are?
it's about 4 p.m.
What time is it 1 hour ago?
Uh, 3 p.m.
Okay, so what time is it on Mars?
Uh, I don't know.
And like, how long does 1 hour take on Mars, relevant to Earth? Or how long does,
Well,
do you know what I mean? Maybe it takes 1 hour. Maybe it doesn't take 1 hour. Like, this is what I think. People say it's like, it's like right now, let's say I'm in Melbourne. Let's say it's 10:50
yeah.
p.m. People say, okay, this is 10:50 p.m. and then in 24 hours it'll be 10:50 p.m. the next day. But like even that's bullshit, because there's not 365 days in a year. There's 365 and a quarter days in a year, because we have the leap year, right?
Hmm.
Because it's relevant to where the planets are. Like if we have the sun and then everything orbits the sun, and then we take a bit longer to orbit the sun sometimes because there's other masses in there dragging us around. That's what determines time. If time, like if we say a day is 24 hours, a day is how long it takes to orbit the sun, right? Which is, by the logic, if it's 365 and a quarter days in a year, then it's not 24 hours to orbit the sun. It's slightly more, and at least has to be more some of the time. Like in
Hmm.
what I think time is, and it can't be linear in what I think, because it gets warped due to the gravity of masses near other masses. At least this is my understanding of
Hmm.
physics. Time is just a chronological order in which events take place from A, B, C, and D. So before I asked you this question, I asked you what time it is. That was in the past. What I say to you is in the future. But time explains the relationship between those masses and how they move. Does that make sense? At least
Hmm.
this is what I
Yeah.
think. I think you can say it's 10:50 p.m., it's 3 p.m., it's 4 p.m. I think it's all bullshit, personally. Do you understand? And I don't think it's linear either, because like if you watch, say, Interstellar, you can say, oh, it's X amount of years back here, but it's hours on this thing. That couldn't exist if time was linear, because time gets warped. If I ask you a question and I say, pick a box, one or two, what do you say?
Two.
Okay, but did you pick one on the other parallel universe? I don't know. But if you did, is time linear?
Yeah. It appears that I don't know much about time. It actually is a we
That's
don't have
okay.
enough time to figure this one out
Yeah, that's
on
okay. We
stream. But
might never have
apparently,
enough time to figure this one out.
quantum physics, I believe, suggested that time is in fact not linear, which is weird. Like things like there are inevitabilities that happen because of things in the past. I don't really get how that works, but whatever.
Um, yeah,
Anyway,
we definitely don't have time to discuss this one, but that's
yeah.
okay. Maybe another a conversation for another day when we're not on the podcast.
One interesting thing that I want to add is that it turns out that human brains do something that's totally different from robot calculations or whatever, or robots.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that the best teams for, I read this in a book called Range, but the best teams for like, I don't know if it was chess or I don't know if it was something else, like some kind of sport, were actually human and robot combinations.
Hybrids.
They call them Cerberuses, huh?
The hybrids, huh? Get 4 robots and
Yeah.
4 humans is better than 8 of either.
I mean, this sounds like some bullshit out of a cartoon.
I think that could definitely be true. Why not?
Yeah, but apparently the human brains do something that's just.
Let me leave you with another question before we go. So, your name's Daniel Cates, and you were born to Daniel Cates' parents, right?
Yeah.
And you were born X amount of years ago, X amount of days ago. You know the answer. I don't know how old you are exactly. But if I was born to your parents and raised in your home, and then walked every day in your shoes, would I be you?
I don't know.
Would I make every decision that you made or not? I don't know
Probably
either.
not.
Probably not. I still see the world as black and white, yeah?
Yeah. Well. We'll have to. The black and white one will settle later. I'll
settle
be
later.
sure to have this shirt or something, and you can have a black shirt,
Okay.
white hat or something.
This shirt's white.
Um.
I'm just fucking with you.
Huh?
I'm just fucking with you, mate. It's a black shirt.
I've got a. Oh, by the way, I want to mention that I noticed that you interrupted me less than you did from before. I was the one interrupting more in general over this call.
I guess
So
I
I'll give you a
was.
compliment.
Yeah, I'll pat myself on the back for that. This is when I was in Cyprus, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because I wasn't sleeping and my thoughts were racing, so I was probably just being a bit of a dickhead. My bad.
That's cool. No, I'm saying
That
I'm
happens.
complimenting you.
Yeah, I appreciate
Uh,
it. You're allowed to
leave you
interrupt
with-
me. It's all good. You're the human.
I have one very important question for you before we go. We're running out of time.
Shoot.
We'll have to solve life mysteries another time.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah. So what's so on your Twitter, it says that you're a consumer of ice cream. So
Yeah. Might have to
what,
throw that one in
is
the
your-
bin too. But anyway, moving on. You're going to ask me about some ice cream?
What's your favorite flavor?
I don't know if I have a favorite flavor per se, but I have some favorite brands. Does that make sense? Because I feel like some of the manufacturers of ice cream are much better than others.
Mm-hmm.
But favorite flavor? I think I like the stuff that's like slight hybrids with different stuff going on. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I have a pure answer for favorite flavor, but some of the brands I like, for example, I'm not big on Ben & Jerry's for whatever reason. I feel like it's got too much sugar in it. It's not creamy enough. I like the creamier stuff. I think Movenpick's pretty good. And in Australia, I like Connoisseur. And then there's a bunch of boutique brands that I like that are pretty good also. Some ones in Australia.
Okay.
Chase the brands, mate. That's where the gourmet stuff comes from. But I've started to realize I might be lactose intolerant. So maybe I got to give up the ice cream, which hurts. Hurts my soul, bro.
Okay.
What about you?
All
What's your
right.
favorite flavor?
I think it's Rocky Road.
Rocky Road.
But you never know. There might be some ice cream flavors out there that I haven't tried.
There you
As
go.
I've discovered.
It's all on the spectrum. We can introduce you to some new flavors. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I appreciate the time you put in and your input towards and your efforts towards this winning the game of life thing.
No
from a
worries. My pleasure.
philosophical angle. It's been it's great efforts. We're gonna need more team members like yourself
Okay.
in there.
No
Put in
worries.
that. Yeah, but we'll have to solve life's mysteries another time.
Yeah. No
We'll,
worries.
we'll,
It was
we'll
nice
have more
talking to
mysteries
you.
to solve. Huh?
Oh, too many mysteries to solve. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah. As we discussed, we need to be patient with the mysteries. Just tackle a few at a time.
Yeah. We'll put a couple of balls down for the minute, and then we'll practice our juggling in the spare time. We'll see how we go.
All right. We'll practice the juggling too. We'll get to the juggling. All right. Well,
It's a pleasure
great
talking
having
to
you
you.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.